So we'll start at 7:02. And the first piece is public participation, and I don't see anybody from the quote public. So we'll move on to the budget. So Catherine, I assume you're gonna start. Oh, Adam Rogers is joining us.
Oh, okay. Hi, Adam.
Welcome. We just started the meeting. So Catherine, you want to go through this year's or the 2022 budget for us?
Yes, this is, you did get copies, right?
Yeah, I think everybody's got it. Yeah.
Okay. So what it says on the front is about personal services. There's no changes. There's hours and positions are exactly the same. We haven't added anything there. The librarian's contract expires in June. So if it's resettled, there will probably be an additional amount that would be added to this contract. So you're not seeing that number there. And Sunday hours were not included last year, and they're not restored in this budget either. So when I met with Steve and Kevin, I had the number in there as a subtotal. And one of the first things they said was, let's take Sunday out. And it sort of makes sense to take Sunday out because what they said was, let's take Sunday out and look at it again in November. Which does make sense because we don't really know where we're going with the pandemic. We're likely to not really need Sunday until maybe January. So that didn't, I thought that was okay. The only other change from last year is in a materials increase that was part of a contract with Noble. So that's increasing overdrive materials by $2,000. So that helps us with our material expenditure requirement.
So it's specific to overdrive. Okay.
It is, I'm pretty, yes. In the narrative section, it's broken down. What went to Noble. Yeah, and it's materials. It's downloadables and periodicals.
Okay, I see it. Not much of a change, obviously.
No, there's not much of a change.
But electricity and gas, no changes there?
No, I just kept them the same because there's been plenty in them the last few years. So if we go back with people back in the building, I think we're holding steady. I don't think I'd run into a problem with that amount.
Right. So you have room. Okay.
I have room.
Okay. So are you in negotiations now with the union?
I'm not positive because I have not been included in that. But the librarians, who's the head of it.
Stewart.
Oh, yeah, the steward. She said, it's nighttime and I can't think. She said it would be taken care of in March, she thought.
So
So I think they are going to be negotiating, but I don't know that they've started yet.
So who's involved from the board's side for the negotiations, or is it Mayo?
It's not the board, it's usually Steve Mayo. And he'll contact me, or this is what's happened before. He contacts me and will say, you know, is there anything that you need? This is what, that, you know, we'll talk about it a little bit. But for the most part, everything that I've been involved in has been very simple.
Okay. Joe or Teray, you got any questions on the library budget?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
Catherine, what savings has there been since, you know, the building's been closed?
There's been good savings in personal services because if people, well, nobody's really taking time off, but when people take time off, we don't have to cover. So there's probably between 30 and 40,000 in personal services that's going to go back at the end of the year. We figured that out today. It's not making a lot of difference in the utilities, really. We're saving on paper,
Yeah,
a lot on paper. We're expending, we don't really see the savings that much because we're buying a lot of the PPP COVID stuff, the PPE.
Well, that's all reimbursable, isn't it, Dan?
It's all reimbursable, but
Yeah.
what's going to happen is, because I don't think I'm going to need that money back because we are saving. So the expenses that we've had, you know, we're saving in toilet paper because there's nobody in the building, but we're buying masks. So it's kind of, but the masks are more expensive. So we are spending a little bit more. I made those numbers red in the narrative section so you could see. When I asked Kevin about it, he said if I needed that money back, he would give it to me, but they're not going to put it into everybody's, they're not going to replace it to everybody's line item because it may not be necessary.
Well, has there been any cutback at all because of the building being closed and personnel?
We have not needed pages. So pages are where everybody's working full time. We rotate into the building. The entire circulation staff is on the first and second floor of the building, spaced out, and they're working. Have you ever been in the offices, like behind the okay, so the offices are very, very small, so we can't put people in there, more than one person, because of the recommendations and the air and everything. You're not supposed to have too many people in an enclosed space. So the staff that's in the building is on the first and the second floor, and they're doing all the circulation, and they're doing what's called technical services. They're processing all the new books. They're getting all the new stuff in and processing it. So that's only the circulation staff. Everybody else takes turns going in. So there'll be say one children's librarian at a time will go in, and everything else is remote. So we're doing everything remotely, and we're doing everything that was on the calendar when we closed.
Yeah, including programming, right? Doing the programs remote. Yeah, all the programming and stuff. Yeah.
So it's all being done, and we do. If you need a notary, you can make an appointment to have a notary. If you need printing, that's done. Anything we can do remotely, that's how we do it.
Okay.
So it's called like curbside. We're doing everything at the Avon Street door.
Yeah, I know. I picked up books.
Yeah, it's labor intensive, but it serves as many people as we were able to do before. Everybody who wants something is getting it in a timely manner by doing it this way. So it's worked out pretty well. So if people get vaccinated and we get back to semi-normal, we're going to have to be able to pivot really quickly. So we were talking about that today. The next step, how will we reverse?
You're going to have time to plan that, don't worry.
Yeah. But you know, if you get caught, you don't want to get caught, because if something happens and all of a sudden people are vaccinated and they're looking for the library to open, you have to be ready. And it would take us a little while to pull it together, so.
I'll let you know when we get it. We're a little older than you.
Not that much, but
Don't bet on it.
I
All
listened,
right.
I listened to Dr. Fauci yesterday, and he said we could be surprised in March and April, that the doses are really gonna be ramped up by March and April. So keep your
You're
fingers.
right. You'll be surprised.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So Catherine, so how much do you think in terms of total dollars you might be returning to the general fund come June 30th?
It's hard for me to tell.
I mean, I heard you say 30 to 40,000 in personal services.
I know. And
And I look at, vehicle, allowance,
right.
tuition is low.
Yeah, tuitions I'm going to be spending. I know what I'm going to be spending. Can I send you numbers tomorrow?
Sure.
Because Munis came out today, and that will give me the most recent balances, and I'm going to use those
Okay.
to
That'll
see
be
if,
good.
if I can estimate, and that will give us something closer.
Yeah. Yeah, a ballpark is fine, just a range, because I know things will change between now and then.
Yeah.
Right, right. But I'll get a better range if I look at what happened today
Okay.
than what I have here, because this number is too old.
Good.
Okay.
That's all I got, Dan.
All right. Teray, you got any questions for Catherine or the board members?
Yes. So first of all, thank you, Catherine, for the information. I actually think you answered several of my questions in your summary, so I appreciate that. The one part that I'm still just having trouble understanding is just the minimum materials expenditure requirement. I try to do my own research on. I'm new to the finance committee, so I'm new to this budget process. But I tried to look at the regulations to understand it, and I'm just still a little confused as to how it factors into the budget and what exactly it is. So do you mind shedding some light on that?
Sure. I review this online every year because and sometimes it changes a little bit. There was some changes this year because of the pandemic. So the idea behind it is for all libraries in the state to be paying their fair share because we all work together. We exchange materials. And so we want to be level with Reading and it's all relative to the size of your community and everything. It's a pretty fair process.
I see.
So the idea is that based on your population, on our population, we need to be spending 13% of our operating budget on materials. And materials will now even include some technology. So if I wanted to do a digital media center, some of that equipment would count toward it. We wouldn't be penalized if it wasn't all books. And that also includes things like databases. It's everything that you can think of as a material. It's not just books.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, I might add to that so several years we were short of the 13%, and Sharon Gilley, who was Catherine's predecessor, had to go through a process of asking for a waiver based on other measurements. For example, number of hours the library is open to the public. There's other aspects. So for I don't know how many years, a long time, we were short on materials and supplies, and we had to ask for a waiver. It's only been in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years that we've managed to get this line item of the budget up high enough such that we don't have to ask for a waiver anymore.
Yeah, that was a good about 15 years, Dan.
It was at 15 that we were short? Yeah, a long time.
No, actually, we were short, but we weren't needing a waiver all those years. I think the first waiver was around 2008.
Okay.
But we were using every resource. We were using all our resources then to get to that point to stay certified.
Right, because staying certified is an important aspect, very important aspect.
Yeah, so the certification means that you get to play with everyone else. If
Yeah.
you're not certified, other towns can decide that they don't want to serve your patrons because you're not meeting the standard.
Sort of like being blackballed.
Yeah.
A little bit, but we do all share materials, so it's in everybody's best interest that we all are in a level, on a level playing field.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It was very helpful. And the only other question I have, I know we talked a little bit about personal services. I just wanted to briefly revisit it. So I noticed for some of the employees, like there's a change in step, and it looks like, I'm assuming a comparable increase in compensation. So, and maybe this is a question for Steve Mayer, because my understanding he's involved in negotiating the contracts, but how is the step classification determined? Is this something that's built into employees' contracts, or is it something that's subject to the discretion of you or other forms of the library leadership, whether it be the board of trustees?
The only time we can make a decision about a step is when you hire someone.
Okay.
If I hire someone at a step 1, they'll go to step 2 within 6 months. But if
Okay.
I hire at a step 2, they won't go to step 3 for a year. So you have a little bit of leeway to hire at a little higher. But once the person is on board, it's all just clockwork, that every time you're due for an increase, the step goes every year. A step is annual until you get to the top of the steps, which I think is 7. It will be a 7 or an 8. And once you hit the top, you stay there. And then those increases are only cost of living.
They're only COLA.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, so usually there's a COLA. So that if you're at step 2 for an entire year and a COLA goes into effect in January, you would get that little COLA bump.
Okay. So are there instances where the step change would be in excess of COLA? I mean, I don't know what the rate of COLA is. Is it 3%?
It tends to be 1.5% every 6 months.
Okay.
That's what the old contract was.
Okay.
So if you see someone with a step, their increase is at the end, their wage change is going to be a little bit higher percentage wise because there was a step involved.
Okay. All right. All right. So just to give you some background, it's because I was sort of assessing the percentage increase with some of the employees. And I noticed there was one person it looks like she had gone up about a little over 6%. And so that's where I started to try to figure out, I saw that there was a step change, and I just wanted to get some background as to how the percentage jump was a bit higher than some of the other employees.
Yes, that particular percentage jump, I bet I know what it was. We had a department head retire. Okay. And somebody in her department was promoted to department head. So that person actually changed levels. She went from a 9 librarian to a 10 librarian. So it's not just the step, but also the whole, whatever that tier is.
I see. Okay. Okay. So I don't remember the specific person I was looking at.
Yeah, next to each person's name, there's a number. If it's an S, that's a supervisory contract. If it's an L, that's the librarian contract. So that's the level that they're at. And then there's a step column, and you'll see what the steps were this year and what they're anticipated to be next year. Okay. And each person who leaves and is replaced, the person who replaces them follows the person who leaves on the spreadsheet, so that at the end you can compare. Like if we look at Nancy Sheehan, she was due to earn $70,000 and the new person came in and she's going to earn $67,000. So you're getting to see the difference in that turnover.
I see. So, well, so it looks like I was able to find the one that I was focused on earlier under line 13. The last name is Catalini. So this looks like it's a little over 6% increase from FY21 to 22. And I was just trying to understand, because for some of the others, I started to figure out sort of the key system, and it looks like there was a promotion, there was a change in position, but I was having trouble trying to figure out why the percentage increase for her position was a little bit higher, and I just assumed that it was contractual.
Okay, well, there's two things going on there.
Thank you.
And it is all contractual. She was hired this year at step 3 and 4. So in this year, she started at step 3. She went up half the year, goes to 4. So next year she's going to be at 4 and 5. But she is also under a contract. She's in the supervisory union contract, and that contract was settled.
I see. Okay.
So that reflects the increase in the contract as well as everything else.
Okay. Thank you. I thought it would be helpful to actually give you an example and that helps me understand it. So thank you.
Almost everybody is their own example.
Yeah.
as I go through it, it looks that way.
But thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Okay. So the only other thing I'll note is that when Steve and Kevin were speaking to me, and they mentioned November and said we can talk about Sundays in November, they asked me to consider using state aid funds. And so state aid is what you get, the money you get for being certified. And I have saved 3 years of state aid. You get about $40,000 a year. So I was surprised, and I said I was surprised, and I said that I wasn't crazy about the idea, but I didn't know why, and I would think about it, and that some of that money was earmarked, and so I would really have to think about it. So I did think about it, and I contacted some other directors, and I contacted the MBLC, and using state aid for personal services is not a road I want to go down. We have typically used state aid for, well, I hold it back. And the example of 2008, when the economy tanked and we were cut in the middle of the year, Sharon had 3 years of state aid, and Kevin had been after her to not hold back that money. And that's what she used to stay certified. So I have always followed her lead, and I've held back some money so that if something happens in the middle of the year, because what happens is if you get cut in the middle of the year, you don't have time to get that money back from someplace before you have to file for that certification. So your expenses would be too low, and there'd be no way to make it up. So we have that little bit that's set aside for that. And I also the operating budget does not include, there's no line for programming, which is something that's relatively new to libraries and maybe in the last 5 or 6 years. And we probably spend $30,000 to $40,000 a year on programming, or we can. Plaza Jazz alone can be $10,000 a summer. So that can be expensive. If you want a speaker or, a facilitator, that can be expensive.
So are the Friends covering some or all of that?
They cover usually all the children's.
And who else is covering it?
Blossoms.
Oh, that's right, Blossoms, of course.
So Blossoms we have not been able to have because of the pandemic, and the Friends can't have a book sale because of the pandemic. So I would really hesitate to go into state aid. The other thing is furniture and furniture repair, the upholstery. No other department really has that kind of expense, so it's not in the budget. And the library was done by a designer, so the quality of the furnishings are, like a high-end hotel. and you really want to keep that. And so using gifts and state aid is a way that we've been able to do that.
So so does that mean you're gonna be putting in a request, the capital for furniture?
No, no, I would never get it probably. The whole front plaza needs to be replaced.
Right.
So we have so many things that are other capital expenses that, it's, I think when you look at Sundays, that's 4 hours in the afternoon and people really like it. It is very nice to have, but you have to also look at what you give up for that service. And I think that it could be significant.
Right. So I had a question about the trust fund income. Kevin gave us a figure of $49,000.
That's
So,
an offset.
so how much is in the trust fund roughly?
I don't know. The trust fund offset comes from funds that are managed by the treasurer. I can get that number, but I don't ever have to look at it. So for the most part, I don't know what I just see that's the interest that he earned in a year.
Right, right.
So I don't see the rest of I can get a list of the funds, but I don't see them.
Do you see the any principals amounts that go into the trust fund? Gifts from individuals
Well,
for the library?
those are separate. So the offset is held by the treasurer, and those tend to be really old funds, like the BBs put money aside. Those were all really old. Then there were newer funds that were given to the trustees, and those are held, the trustees have those in an account where it's earning. And so we call those trustee gift funds. Those are all the gift funds. And the majority, are you with me?
Yeah, so far.
So the majority of those, there's probably about $1 million there. And the majority of that is restricted, and you can only use the income. And we used almost all the income in 2008. We used it all. So it now has built up a little bit. There are a couple of unrestricted funds, and right about now, at the end of the year, we had about $20,000 available in unrestricted trustees' gift funds.
So what do you use it for?
Well, right now we have a plan to possibly fix the, what do you call it? The marquee on the front lawn. You know how that has no sign in it? We're looking at that. So that's something we may use that money for. We also, I think there are advantages to letting that grow. It has grown a bit, and it's to our advantage to do that, I think.
Because so you use it like an endowment.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we do also get gifts, and those gifts go into town accounts, and they go in one town account actually called various gifts. So if people give us donations for paper, we don't charge for printing. We ask for donations instead. The printed paper donations go into various gifts, and we use that money to buy more paper and printer supplies for public printing. And that's one fund that's there. That's where the Blossoms money is, in various gifts.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
We do have lots of little pots.
Yeah, you do.
We have lots of little pots, but the only one that's really unrestricted is, and is not growing at all for us, is state aid. that, you want to use that, but you also want to save them. So you want to use one a year, but save as many as you can. And it took us a while to get back to having this number that was saved because we had used them all in the 2008 crisis.
Like our rainy day fund.
It's like a rainy day fund.
But I would say this too is that for the amount of monies that we do have in these trusts and whatnot, they're designed to supplement, not support what we believe would be the town's obligation to support the library. Do you know what I mean? Through the tax base. So payroll, operation of the building. We shouldn't be using gift funds to do those things, which are supporting the operations of the library, as opposed to supplemental things like potentially programmings that something that we think that is sort of outside the scope that would enhance the library's use or benefits to the citizens. But we talked about Sunday hours at the meeting, and I mean, I think it's vitally important, and we certainly understand that the town's under some budgetary constraints given the unique circumstances that we're facing. But we've been giving money back last year. We'll give money back this year, and I think it's important that if and when the appropriate time is to consider opening on Sundays again, that we be able to do it, but that we shouldn't be using we should be using the funds from the town. We shouldn't be using state aid to supplement payroll.
Right.
It doesn't seem appropriate to me, and I don't I haven't dived into it deep enough, but state aid, there may be some, I don't know if there, well, Catherine, you talked to Noble, there may be some restrictions on whether or not you state aid from the state. I don't know about using.
No, I did look, there's not a restriction on it. You,
Strictly,
as long as it goes to the benefit of the library. But they did kind of say personal services is not a good way to go. Because it's time that sort of disappears. It's not something that it's not a new initiative. It's not a, it's too easily lost, so that, and it also cannot count toward your municipal appropriation requirement.
Right.
So you have to be really careful the following year that if you're considering that part of your appropriation, you're messing with that formula a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, it's not going to books.
So one of our MOs for many years is not to penalize departments who return monies to the general account because they don't spend it. We're not going to cut those budgets. So we're going to continue that. And the other thing is what you're describing is something that, it could be reduced. And the last thing we want to do is devote monies that could be reduced at a future date to recurring services. And we avoid that. So what you're doing is absolutely appropriate. And I don't see a problem with it, personally anyway. Okay. Anything else that we need to cover?
I can't think of anything.
All right. So
I will send you those potential turn back numbers tomorrow.
That'd be great. So I guess we'll see some or all of you on the 8th with the town council. I'll be on as the chairman of this little subcommittee to present our report. And if I understand the process correctly, Catherine, you'll be giving the initial review to town council, then I'll comment afterwards. I'm going to keep my comments very brief. But I guess, yeah, we'll see you all or some of you on the 8th.
Yeah.
Anything else?
None here.
If
You're
you
good,
have
Teray? Joe, you're good? You're good.
any
All right.
questions, just email.
Yep, we'll send you. I don't think we have any committee comments because I think we've already covered that. So the last item on the agenda is an adjournment. So can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Teray. All in favor? Hang up.
Thank you. Have a good
All right, all right. Thank you, guys.
you.
Appreciate it,
care.
Catherine.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to be seen.